The Evercade is one of the strongest libraries of shmups out there. I actually don't know if there is a console with a stronger mix of awesome flying shmups. I want to feature some of these, but this is not a best of list, and by no means definitive. Just a bunch of really cool ones that I think you need to play. In the spirit of the Evercade, I'm going to try and cover different generations, so let's get into it. Our first game on the list is a contender for the best shmup on the system, which is Batsugun Special Edition, found on Total Plan Arcade 3, which is one of the strongest arcade carts out there in my opinion. It's a visually stunning game. The graphics have some awesome sprite work, but the visual effects are spectacular. You get a choice of different ships with different firing mechanisms, all of which fill the screen in a blur of different colors, but everything is so crisp that the enemy bullets never get lost in the mayhem. It's quite an accomplishment because there's so much going on, but it is still all really easy to follow. Of course, that doesn't make it easy to not get hit. The bullet hell patterns here are wild, but at the same time, the hitbox on your ship is forgiving, so by learning it, you increase the chances of weaving in and out of enemy patterns successfully. The bosses are spectacular as well, just huge beasts that fill the screen with bullets. They're really fun to take down, even if you die a million times while you're trying to do it. Continuing puts you right back to where you died, so you could just quarter feed your way through it, but I feel like this is also a game that, as hard as it is, strikes the balance of actually being learnable, and you are incentivized to replay to see how far you can get on 1 credit or just increase your high score. I just love this game, and I don't think I'm alone when I say it is one of the best on the system. Fire Shark is the opposite of accessible and learnable. In fact, I can't imagine anyone being able to beat this game on 1 credit. I don't even think I can imagine making it to the end of the first level on 1 credit. A couple of months ago, I put out a video on hard Evercade games, and I featured Truxton as one of the hardest games I've ever played. This game has a lot of similars to that, and it is also obscenely difficult. The enemy ships fly at you from all over the place. There are always a ton of enemies on screen, and their bullets just travel unbelievably fast. I feel like I have a better chance of dodging a real bullet than anything the enemy's throwing at me in this game. To make matters worse, your default gun, which is a spread shot, is just so unbelievably weak. It's actually really good at handling the little threats, but when you get to a boss, forget about it. If you have this gun, you literally just can't kill them without spamming your bombs. The bosses are typically on a time limit. If you don't kill them by a certain point, you can just fly past them. You could power up your gun by collecting 3 P icons. Of course, it doesn't matter, because you'll die in seconds after getting the new gun, and then be reset down to the standard gun. Unlike Truxton, you do continue right where you die. I turned the difficulty all the way down and was still dying literally every 3 seconds, but I wanted to feature one obscenely difficult game for veterans of the genre, and I felt like this game was just so hard it really hit the bill. Definitely check it out if you want a tough game, but maybe scrubs like me should look at one of the other games on this list. Alright, for our next one, let's go old school with Beamrider, found on Activision Collection 1. This is a game that I have zero nostalgia for. I did grow up on Atari, but I never heard of this game until it released on Evercade. I really fell in love with it. I wish I had it as a kid. You're a spaceship on a 3D-ish plane. I have to say, it looks really cool. Remember, this is Atari, so the graphics are primitive, but they do a really nice job of making you feel like you're playing a 3D space shooter, and the depth perception works really well. Like most games of this era, your objective is really simple. You have to shoot 15 spaceships on each level. Once you do, the mothership appears, and you have to blow it up with a missile, but you only get 3 shots. If you miss, the ship just flies off the screen and you still get to proceed, which is good, because I almost always missed. The levels start out really easy. The basic ships are simple enough to shoot down, but every couple of levels they will introduce a new hazard. I made it to level 10. The manual says there are 99. Maybe I could save state abuse one day to fact check it, but I think that kind of defeats the point of a game like this. By the time I got to level 10, it was just crazy. There were missiles flying all around the screen, little invincible bouncy guys, meteors, as well as the standard spaceships. This is one of those hyper addictive games that you just keep playing to see how far you can go. As far as Atari shooters go, this is truly top notch, and I'm surprised it took me so long to hear about it. Definitely worth checking out, even if you're not usually into Atari games. Let's do one more really old school game with MegaMania, found on the Activision Collection 1. Like Beamrider, I have no nostalgia for this game, but I really enjoyed it. It kind of plays out like Space Invaders. You have a ship at the bottom of the screen, and a whole bunch of monsters or spaceships or whatever are descending from the top and shooting down at you. Your little ship could shoot one bullet at a time, and bullets follow your ship, kind of like what you see in River Raid. The enemies generally descend down the screen, but when they reach the bottom, it's not game over. Instead, they kind of loop back up to the top. If they make contact with your ship, you die, but they generally fly left to right, so you could dodge them and then shoot them again when they are above you. The enemy patterns can get pretty crazy, but they do move in set rhythms, so once you know what you're doing, it becomes a little easier to follow them. The game ratchets up in difficulty pretty quickly. The first level is real simple, but it does not take long before the enemies are weaving back and forth and all over the place. But the game definitely hooked me and made me want to keep playing to see how far I can get, which was not very far at all actually. Despite that, I still really enjoy this game, and is one I revisit pretty frequently on the Activision 1 collection. Bridge Strike is a modern-day reimagining of River Raid. As a kid, River Raid was one of the first, if not the first, vertical scrolling shmup I ever played. It was such a cool game that had a lot of things to shoot, bridges that you would destroy as checkpoints, and these little fuel barrels that you had to fly over so you didn't run out of fuel. Bridge Strike takes that concept and cleans it up a little bit. The graphics are obviously much nicer and updated for a modern generation, but the control structure is exactly the same. It is simple, one-button shooting. And just like River Raid, your shot follows you. So as you shoot and then you move left to right, the shot moves left to right with you. It makes some interesting shooting dynamics and takes a little getting used to. There are also a lot more obstacles than what you saw in that classic. Many of the enemies are ripped right out of River Raid, including little helicopters and planes. But you also get stuff like landmines, UFOs, missile launchers that sit on the side, stuff like that. And unlike River Raid, this game does have an ending. It's a very simple but really fun shmup that harkens back to a simpler time of shooting before we had the massive bullet hell stuff that we got today. I actually think I prefer games like this, and if you love River Raid, then you will definitely love this game. It may not be the most original, but it is well done and really a good time. CyBattler, found on Jellicoe Arcade Collection 1, is an insanely fun and unique shmup. That is my personal favorite on this list, and I think it's one that every shmup fan needs to check out. It looks like a standard vertical shooter. You control a mech that is constantly flying upwards, and you have enemies pouring in from all directions. But your shooting is not fixed. You can aim in 8 directions and also lock your fire in place to strafe around, making the game feel more like a vertical run and gun like Commando as opposed to your standard shmup. Of course, the game takes advantage of this multi-directional shooting by having enemies pouring in from all sides of the screen. This adds a lot to the gameplay and presents challenges you would not normally see in a game like this. You also get a melee attack, which comes in the form of a really cool laser sword. This is super useful. It is powerful and lets you get up in the enemy faces to bash them. And unlike most games in this genre, you get a pretty decent sized life bar and can take a fair amount of damage before you die. Always a welcome addition for a genre that is usually so punishing. It is a challenging game, but outside of the last boss, it was a little ridiculous. The rest of the game always felt fair. CyBattler is fast, visually appealing, unique, and tons of fun. Definitely gotta check this one out. Let's do one more from Jellicoe Arcade 1. Saint Dragon is such a cool horizontal shmup that is extremely unique and extremely difficult. You play as a giant fire-breathing dragon with a head and a tail. Normally having such a large sprite in a shmup would be a negative, as it's such a huge hitbox. But in this game, your tail is completely invincible. Not only that, but it damages anything it touches and absorbs bullets. Your tail moves with your head, and learning to manipulate the position of your tail to block enemy fire and damage enemies becomes crucial to success in this game, giving it a much different feel than your average shmup. It's a little slower pace and more deliberate, but as hard as it was, it definitely clicked for me a little more than the average bullet hell shmup. It's still very difficult. This is not a game that allows for credit feeding. You get one mid-level checkpoint and a boss at the end. There are also no dip switch settings to make this game easier. I was very disappointed when Evercade implemented these switches, and I found the default was already the easiest difficulty. I made it pretty far in the game. I was able to make it to the checkpoint on the second to last level, but could never finish it. I still had a blast with it. It is one I plan on trying again at some point. Our last game is Ironclad, found on Neo Geo Collection 1. This was an exclusive release for the Neo Geo CD. It never actually got an arcade release, which is probably why most of us never heard of it until this collection. This is a fantastic game though, and my second favorite on the list. The first thing that stands out is the visuals. The game has a kind of polygonal look that you would see on the PlayStation 1 with some pre-rendered backgrounds. It's unique for the genre and makes it stand out amongst its peers. There's a lot to love about the gameplay as well. You get this little option that sits in front of the ship, kind of like what you'd see in R-Type. While it's attached, you have enhanced fire, but you could detach it and then it shoots out in different patterns depending on what weapons you have equipped. I found both were useful in certain situations. Like when I encountered a boss, I would try to detach my option right in front of it and then just fire rapidly with both my regular gun and this for bigger damage. It could also be used to block shots, but getting hit detaches it from you and you could summon it back with the touch of a button. You have 3 different ships you could choose from, each with different attributes and firing mechanisms, as well as a ton of branching paths. There are 6 levels you need to complete in order to beat the game, but there are a ton of options on how you go there, making some really good replay value that you don't always see in games like this. You also get a life bar, which is actually pretty long and always a welcome addition in a shmup. It's a tough game, but the dip switch settings make it a little more manageable than some of the other titles here, and I actually felt like I was able to make a fair amount of progress without dying up until near the end. The last boss is just silly hard. I think I used more continues on him than I did the entire rest of the game combined. This is just such a fantastic game, and I'm really glad it was included because I would have never known about it otherwise. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of my picks and which ones you would have included. There are so many amazing shmups on the system, I barely scratched the surface of all the awesomeness the Evercade has to offer.